Alright, welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner, Classic Legend and Classics. This is episode number 34, Doubleshot, 33, 28. Well, the first one here is from Joe Comics, the other one's from Star Trek. Yeah, I know it's been like a couple weeks since I did the last Comic Corner. It just had other stuff to work on, so... And plus also, yesterday had this thing where, like, everything was up for renewal. So I figured, though, let's get this done. Alright, first up we have is Darkwing Duck. Yeah. Comics Collection Volume 2, Tales of the Duck Knight. Yeah, this contains the remainder of the Joe Comics run for Darkwing Duck. Of course, still done by Aaron Sparrow and James Savini. Pretty much, basically, this is a Tales of type of book. We have Darkwing, Goslin, and her best friend just looking through various files. And they're at the headquarters of Shush, that's the organization she works part-time for, where we see in the flashback he instead of wearing the tie, because this is not the present day, he has basically an ascot. Yep, and... This is serious, various stuff happening here, including encounters with the villains, which this is a funny one where he just happens to find him watching TV, and then they briefly fight, and then of course they're easily defeated, pretty easily, and then we see act like Sherlock Holmes, and at one point we do have Gizmo Duck pop up here. It's just, like I said, it's a series of stuff that just happens to happen here. But nothing terrible, per se. No, not really. It's just... So it's collecting issues 5 through 8 of this book for Darkwing Duck. Yes. But it is something, though, unlike the Boom Studios book, which lasted for 18 issues, this lasted for only 8. Yeah, not very long. I'm guessing probably the reason why it didn't last very long, probably because basically it was not a good seller for Joe Comics. So, I think I'm guessing either Disney pulled a license or Joe Comics ended the book. That's probably my guess anyways. It's good, definitely, but not a lot of really big highlights aside from seeing Gizmo Duck basically do some stuff here. But, yeah, I get a book roughly a 8.5 out of 10. Final thoughts on the Joe Comics run for Darkwing Duck. I like the first set of issues. The first 4 are amazing. But these last 4 just... I'm guessing they probably had nothing else planned for this book beyond the first 4 issues, but they probably had more issues to do, so they decided just to do these tales, instead of just doing another story arc. Yeah. Though, here's the weird thing about Darkwing Duck. After this ended, Darkwing's license got picked up by Dynamite, which that one set a completely different continuity. Yep, they decided a full-blown reboot Darkwing Duck for reasons, and the app doesn't have the Darkwing Duck by Dynamite stuff. Nope, doesn't have it at all. So yeah, that's the end of Darkwing Duck for this channel for right now until we get more Darkwing Duck. But this is another thing also ending for now, because for some weird reason, not really sure why this is, but this is another book where no more trades in this series, despite the fact there's actually 4 more. You would think, like, getting this book, like, oh, did they run out? No, they just never got the other 4 trades. We have Star Trek by Mike Johnson, Volume 9, The Q Gambit, collecting issues 35 to 40 of Star Trek, Volume 1. So, in this storyline here, we start off with Q talking to Jean-Luc Picard, who appears in the opening issue of the storyline and the end of the storyline. He appears in issue 35 for issue 40. And this is the only time you'll see Jean-Luc Picard the entire series, because the rest of the book continues basically the Calvin Time adventure. So he basically just goes back in time, meets the Kelvin timeline cast, and then just, after interacting for a while, which, by the way, in the original timeline, Q never met the original series crew. Never did. Charlene, who was retconned via Q, But he's not this Q. He's not the John Delancey Q. Now, as for why in the world they assign, and of course he plays the jokes, obviously, and then by sheer randomness, in order to play with them, toy with them, he brings them to the future. An alternate version of the 24th century. Where, because Kirk and his ship disappeared, Q's fault, the Federation surrendered to the Klingons, and so they arrive at what appears to be Deep Space Nine, but it's not called Deep Space Nine here. Nope, it's referred to by its original title, Terok Nor. And, well, before they get there, the ship is attacked by the Jem'Hadar. Yes, the Enterprise is attacked by the Jem'Hadar, which they start on the vessel, because this is when they first meet him, and then they're brought on board, Terok Nor, where Kirk is basically brought to the Commandant's office, and the person in charge of the place is, no surprise here, it's Gul Dukat. Yep, Gul Dukat. You're like, what? Gul Dukat? Yeah, and then after talking to him for a while, I was like, you're honored guest. Let's show you to your quarters. A cell where his cellmate is Ben Sisko. And here's something else interesting. So you can think of this as sort of like another mirror universe. And then they make their escape with the Defiant. Yes, the Defiant. Which looks a lot like the Starfleet vessel. So it's captained by Miles O'Brien. Which, that is interesting, given the fact that he also did this in the mirror universe. So you could say this is an alternate mirror universe. Kind of, in a way. So, and then rest of the crew, they of course, the Enterprise throughout this whole book is controlled by the Cardassians. So then they go to Earth, which has basically been conquered by the Klingons. And get this, the Chancellor is somebody that nobody expects. Now, in the mirror universe, this kind of makes sense. Here, it makes no frickin' sense at all. So, the High Chancellor of the Klingon Empire is Worf. And Kurn is his second command. His brother. Yes. We'll get back to him later. And yes, he looks like the way he did on the show. Which, that is interesting, the fact that everybody, and of course, they're on Earth. They run into Dax, they run into Dr. Bashir. Odo, of course, basically, and they run into Founders, obviously, the Changelings. Odo's different or traded because he basically killed one of them. Yes. And weirdly enough, for this book, Odo does not shapeshift. He does have the appearance of he had in the show, but he doesn't shapeshift the whole book, which is weird. Also, this is really weird for this book. The Founders using guns, because they never use guns in the show. They pretty much use their CGI tentacle stuff to basically strangle people with. But guns? Not really. This is completely new to them. Either that they, either Odo probably shut off their way the shapeshift or something else, because it is weird seeing shapeshifters with guns who can easily basically make their arms into tentacles. They get away from them, and eventually by the end of the book, Worf is killed by his brother Karn, who becomes the new High Chancellor because Klingons. And Gul Dukat, and by the way, they do meet up with Kira and Quark. Yes, they're in the book too, and Quark actually sells them out because, of course he would, because he's a merchant, and he's also a Ferengi. Weird enough, you probably think, okay, so we have Kira, we have Jadzia. You're probably thinking, okay, is there somebody missing? Now, Jake is here. Yes, Jake is here. So, of these, oh, by the way, Kiki O'Brien, she is definitely here. So, good, she's here. Here's who's missing. Because this is an alternate Deep Space Nine. So, who is missing? Who is part of the show? Ram, Nog. Yeah, they're not in the book, which is weird. There's no mention of Jennifer, though I'm assuming she may be, of course, they do mention that Ben Sisko was drafted to the Human Auxiliary Corps, not Starfleet, the Human Auxiliary Corps, because the Federation surrendered because Kirk disappeared. I'm like, did the Federation Admiralty basically become huge pansies and like just blatantly surrendered? Which doesn't seem like the Federation would do that. Like on a massive scale like this. All because Kirk disappeared. I get the fact Kirk is important to timeline, but come on. Okay, so Kirk surrenders. So what do? Let's have the Federation surrender. Yes. Let's have the United Federation plan surrender. Let's have Earth be conquered by the freaking Klingons. I'm like, what the heck is this? And who else is missing? Okay, so people are not here. Like I mentioned, Rom, Nog, they're not here. There's no mention of Nog being friends with Jake. There's no mention of that here. You're like, okay, is there anything else about DS9 cast not here? Molly! Milos Nikikio's daughter. She's not here. You're like, okay, who else is not here? Admiral Ross. There's no mention of him. Like, is it assumed that he may have been killed at some point? It's possible, but there's no appearance by him. Okay, so, alright. So, if this is an alternate 24th century, here's something else I also tend to ponder about this. Like who else is missing? Well, we do kind of see. Well, the only Bajoran we see the whole book is Kira, and she gets killed in the book. Yes, she gets killed by a power rape possessed Gul Dukat, who kills Weyoun. Yes, he kills Weyoun. Something he never did in the regular books, in the regular universe. Nope, he never did. Weyoun gets killed in, like, very different ways. Like, the first Weyoun was killed by the Jem'Hadar. There was one Weyoun, I think the first Weyoun we saw was Weyoun 4. He got killed by the Jem'Hadar for being a traitor, because he basically went to the cause. Weyoun 5 got killed in a shuttle accident. Yes. Weyoun 6 committed suicide. 7 got killed by Worf by having his neck snapped. Yes, his freaking neck snapped by Worf. Weyoun 8 got killed by Garrick. By being shot by him. Here he's like turned to crisp. And you have Gul Dukat acting crazy. And then Gul Dukat is killed by Q. A character he never met ever in DS9. Never did. Probably because basically the one episode that featured Q was considered to be one of the worst episodes of the entire show. But Q's awesome in the episode. Like, there's no like, if you watch Q less, Q is the best, like, Q is one of the best things about the episode. Him being there, he is just so awesome. John Delancey was so awesome in the episode. Also, there is the famous scene in the episode where you have Q and Sisko getting into an old-fashioned boxing match in the middle of Quark's bar, which, by the way, this is also the same place where Worf and Jadzia got married in Season 5 of the show. Actually, more like Season 6, they got married there. And then by the end of season, Jadzia died because the actress wanted to reduce her contract. But no, they decided to fire her instead. For reasons. So, okay, so it's like, yeah, and Q's like, here, hit me. He's like, he's egging on Sisko to hit him, and then Sisko punches him in the face, and then he says the infamous line, "You hit me. Picard never hits me." And Sisko responds with, "I'm not Picard." Which is true. It's probably by far the best scene in the whole episode. It's like Q just being pure awesome. Yes. And it's like Mike Johnson clearly loves John Delancey's version of Q. Because he's the only Q we've seen throughout almost the entire franchise. And I'm sure John Delancey read this. He would love this comic because of how much Q is on point. A lot of the stuff he does in this book is stuff Q would do. Like, you could think of this book as sort of a little bit of a... This is basically the Kelvin timeline version of Borg. Because that was basically Q taking the Enterprise D across the galaxy in the Delta Quadrant to introduce him to the Borg, who became one of Next Generation's most memorable alien bad guys throughout the entire series, and had a good number of episodes dedicated to him. Not as much as, let's say, Voyager, who had like about half the freaking show dedicated to Borg because of Delta Quadrant. But the artwork is fantastic on Q. And then Q kills Gul Dukat, and then he takes the Enterprise back to the 23rd century, and everything is back normal. You probably think, what was the point of that? Well, it's basically the Kelvin Timeline crew meeting the cast of Deep Space Nine. Probably by far the best thing about this book. I mean, the book itself was actually really good. I enjoyed this. And here's the weird thing about this book, because prior to these editions coming out, this was bigly hyped. Like, IDW basically hyped this like crazy. And can you believe this one came over 10 years ago? You're like, really? Yeah, really. And here's something really interesting, though. Ben Sisko, when he sees Q, he has no idea who the heck he is. You probably think, like, Did he ever meeting Q? Well, my thinking is that he never met Q part of this, so he has no previous knowledge of him, and probably also because, and of course, by the end of the book he does, and Picard's like, "Oh hi Q." I'm not gonna ask, but this book was awesome. Like, I remember when this was announced, like, oh, we have Q interact with the Kelvin Timeline crew, like. Yeah, this sounds like something anyone would read. And of course, this will later lead to another mini-series involving Q, which will cross between the original series, Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, and Voyager, and the Q conflict, which I have reviewed on my channel. It's an awesome mini-series. But this one is amazing. And take a look at that artwork there. That is just spot on John Delancey. It is awesome. I give Star Trek by Mike Johnson, Volume 9, The Q Gambit, a 10 out of 10 because this book is awesome. Yeah, not a bad issue. The whole bunch. It is just pure action. Great interactions with the cast of the Kelvin Timeline movies and Deep Space Nine. I thought everything here was on point. Weird enough, they have Kira die the way that Jadzia died in the show by being killed by a power-possessed Gul Dukat, which is interesting because Gul Dukat never had the desire to kill Kira a lot of the time in the show. Because here's the weird thing about Gul Dukat. He had this mild obsession with having sex with her. Yes, he had a strong desire to have sex with Kira Nerys. Yes, seriously. He has a strong desire for this in the show. Out of all the characters. And I mean, it wasn't to the point, basically, he was drooling every time he saw her. It's like, if you watch the show, yeah, he has that desire, but the thing is, he always keeps himself in control the whole time. Yes, he may have that obsession, but he's in control. He's not like, well, he's not basically forcing Kira to have sex with him. From his perspective, he wants to come naturally. Yes, but him killing Kira is interesting. Because, like I mentioned, if you watch the show, he never had the desire to kill her. He may have an enemy of hers, but it was more like that he was enemy to Sisko than he was to Kira. That's how the show wrote him. Despite the fact that Ben Sisko interacted him throughout the first, throughout the first, roughly the first 4 seasons of the show, they were on pretty good terms, and then by season 5, he became bad guy again. Yes. Weird enough, also, about the changelings here, for some weird reason, they have them picked in wearing normal clothing, which is weird because in the show, they wore these orange one-piece suits that also look like dresses for some weird reason, and only Odo wore something different than everybody else. And that's kind of how they were in the show. Hey, see here wearing pants, like black pants, black shirt. It's a bit unnatural, but I'm guessing the reason why you can accept that because it's an alternate timeline. Yeah. But, give what you will. Would I recommend everybody check this out? Oh, heck yes, definitely. Especially if you're a DS9 fan. Yeah, and Kern killing Worf, that is interesting because basically Kern never had the desire to kill Worf in the show. But the only reason why I can accept Kern get away with this because it's all the timeline. It doesn't have main timeline, of course. Yeah. Plus, also, great book. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share notifications. Next up is the newest episode of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Okay, next video. Bye.